Hi, and welcome to part two of this 1942 Ford GPW restoration. In this video, we will look at the military and civilian modifications that the Jeep has had over its 83-year existence, and a mention and thank you to the Australian Army Registration Number ARN and Military Vehicle Serial Numbers Facebook group, who have a wealth of knowledge on this subject and whose group have helped in verifying some of the information. Starting with the military modifications, the first are the reinforced rear gussets on the chassis and spring hangers. This modification seems unique to Australian Jeeps. It is presumably to strengthen the chassis for the harsh terrain that the Australian forces fought in during the Second World War. Initially a modification during 1944, it would have presumably been used beyond and into the Korean War. The front bell crank. Again, another modification that only seems to appear on Australian Jeeps. As with the rear gussets, it is to reinforce this susceptible part to give it more strength in its anticipated theater of war. Extra footman loops on the bonnet. As with all the other allies throughout the war, the Australian forces would have used the Jeep for all manner of tasks. The loops were to strap extra baggage or equipment to this Jeep for whatever purpose they were needed. It is known that this particular Jeep served with the Signals Corps, so perhaps they were for a piece of signaling equipment. Later front leaf springs. A 42 GPW would have had 8 leaf springs on the front and 9 leaf on the rear. Later in the war, this changed to 10 and 11 for front and rear respectively. Although this Jeep appears to have the original 9-leaf GPW springs, the driver's side front is a 10-leaf GPW, while the passenger side looks to be a 10-leaf Willys. Manual direction indicators. Again, another modification that I think is found only on Australian Jeeps. As the Australians drive on the left side of the road, a left-hand drive vehicle can be difficult to drive and show other drivers where they are going. This ingenious device shows then the vehicle is turning or stopping by the emerging hand. Front registration or TAC sign bracket. Not entirely sure if this is a military or civilian modification, but may have been used to display a TAC sign in service. It would have almost certainly been used to display the license plate of the vehicle when in civilian ownership. Gear stick lock. Again, this may have been post-war military modification or civilian. The idea is to put a padlock around the gear stick and lock to the welded tab on the dashboard to stop the Jeep being stolen. I have seen a variation on this modification where there has been a similar tab on the gear stick itself, but in this Jeep's case, there is no evidence of the second tab. The carburetor. The Ford GPW would have had a Carter carburetor fitted at the factory. Through various in-service maintenance and rebuilds, it may have had other Carter carburetors fitted, or possibly Solex ones. This particular carburetor is a Stromberg, made in Australia. I am unsure if this would have been a military modification to cope with the hot-dry conditions, or may have been fitted in its civilian life. The radiator is a Willys variant. The original GPW radiator has long gone in the past. The unusual thing about this particular radiator is that it has a screw cap. I am almost certain this was a civilian modification, but why someone would go to all the trouble of a modification like this is a mystery. And now we will look at the civilian modifications, starting with the tailgate. In its true form, the Jeep is not so useful on a farm or when used as a workhorse. The cutting of the rear tub and making a tailgate was a popular modification when ex-World War II Jeeps went into civilian life. What's unusual about this Jeep is that the original rear or the tub had been kept to form the tailgate. If you look closely, caution left-hand drive can be seen. This would have complemented the direction indicator shown earlier. The bumper and towing hitch. This Jeep is thought to have been used on a farm and so had its towing hitch modified to pull civilian equipment. The original bumperettes were removed and the elaborate chrome bumper was fitted. Perhaps the most striking civilian modification is the fuel tank. The original fuel tank, which would have been found under the driver's seat, has been removed and this elaborate, possible purpose-built tank has been fitted under the passenger floor. Its filler cap is under the front right wing, so can't have been very practical, but it does show the ingenuity of a farmer with a welder. The rear exiting exhaust. The new fuel tank just shown took the place of the original exhaust, and so the exhaust was rerouted to exit at the rear of the Jeep, a modification made out of necessity. The original handbrake would have been mounted on the dashboard. For whatever reason, the handbrake was moved to inside the Jeep and resembles a Land Rover or possibly other vintage 50s or 60s vehicles. Again, there is some thought gone into this modification, and I am sure when new, would have worked quite well. The original driver and passenger seats were removed and a bench seat fitted. This looks like it was from another 50s or 60s vehicle, or possibly something spare on the farm. The good thing about this modification, though, is that the owner kept the original driver and passenger seat, and they will be restored and reunited with a Jeep during the restoration. Rear seats. When the tailgate was installed, the original rear seat was removed and is sadly not available for this restoration. To replace the seating in the rear, it looks like bench seat cushions were fitted on the tops of both wheelhouses. The brackets and borders can be seen where the cushions would have been located. There is evidence of a canvas cover being used on the Jeep, but not the original military version. Stays and clips can be seen on the rear of the tub and around the sides where the canvas or cover would have fitted. The master cylinder on the original GPW would have been accessed through the floor cover on the driver's side of the vehicle. This was quite a fiddly task, and this modification has put a reservoir connected to the master cylinder cap. I am sure this was a great time saver and easy indication of the state of the brake fluid on the vehicle. The last civilian modification just looks like a hole in the floor, but the hole serves an important purpose. When removing the gearbox and transfer box, the transfer box levers have to be removed by removing their operating shaft. As anyone knows who has done this job, it would be much easier if the shaft could be removed while the transfer box is still in place, and this is what the hole allows. I hope you have enjoyed looking at the military and civilian modifications on this 42 GPW and that it encouraged discussion and ideas. As the restoration progresses, the civilian modifications and post-war military modifications will be removed. But in order to keep some of the Jeep's 80-odd years history, some will be retained and detailed in later videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.